Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a new episode of Bhakshoti Discussion and Social Meeting. This is our seventh podcast, and I think before we start, first of all, we would like to thank the listener for all the support and general feedback that we've been getting. Uh, Another thing we would also like to do is give a shout out to Alloy, who was there with us since the beginning of this idea and whose experience and general feedback also helped us with the whole inception. And he was also actually the one who actually helped us come out with the whole BDSM name. So he's definitely one we would never be able to what do you call this? We would never have been able to start this without him. So, what do you guys feel about BDSM number 7 and our feedback? Edgar?
Hey Ethan, I'm so happy to be recording after it's been some time, right? And I'm really happy to be back doing our seventh episode. The feedback that we got was really amazing, man. I mean, I didn't expect people to be so supportive and actually go and listen to the podcast, give us their take out the time from their busy schedule and give us feedback so that we could come back, analyze it, hear what they said, and now we can improve ourselves. So that was really amazing. What about you, Lionel?
Yeah, so the whole experience has been really great. Thank you. A great shout out to Alloy again. Thanks a lot for all the support till now. Do keep supporting us. We to the listener, thank you for listening. Thank you for giving us your valuable time and feedback, guys. And it's been really great knowing your views. We do hope to become better. Yes, we're novices at stuff like this, but like, we do hope to become better and get you great content and kind of engage you and make
Yeah,
this
and
podcast fun for all of us.
and on a special note, if in case you have noticed the difference in sound quality between podcast 1 and podcast 6, that whole improvement is squarely on Edgar and Lionel, both of whom have taken a lot of efforts in order to go through the whole recording, tweak it, etc. So they are like the whole sound engineers behind this. So yeah, that's a big shout out to you guys.
Yeah,
So you
dude.
guys know.
We are the sound engineers, and also I didn't realize that editing takes so long. I mean, Lionel also would agree with me.
Yeah, man.
Editing for us at least takes 6 to 8 hours, and we are nowhere close to being professional. So I was just talking to Lionel, and I was telling him, imagine if these guys who are the actual proper professional editing, the guys who are actual proper professional podcasters, those guys must be spending so much of time and investing so much of effort and energy, and they are doing video as well. We are not doing video yet. So that's another ball game altogether, which is you really need to give a shout out to all those people putting so much of effort and getting like churning out great quality content.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
man.
doesn't. It's like really. It's really. We know the effort now. We know how. Like for a 1 minute, like technically for a minute, it takes like as good as 5 minutes or 6 minutes close to editing, like just to get you that quality
Correct.
stuff. And it just goes on to say like the sound engineers and the guys working in the back end for like professional companies, the efforts are like it's unimaginable. That's like really great shout out to those guys and the podcasters and whoever's working in the sound engineering department.
Yeah, guys. So definitely your services and your efforts are definitely very appreciated. So I was thinking, you know how in all nowadays in all these famous songs like Taki Taki, just before the
Yeah.
intro, they are like DJ Snake, or they mention their producers.
Yeah.
Even I think Taking Back My Love, they mentioned Red One. So maybe like in the intro we can.
DJ Khalid as well.
Yeah. So maybe like in the intro, when the intro song is playing, we can be like Lionel or Edgar. I don't know.
Yeah.
You guys want to do
We
that?
can try and doing something. Yeah, that's a good idea. We should experiment with that.
Oh, if you guys
but,
want to
like,
come up
we
with
don't know
aliases.
who's the editor for the day, so it's all on either Edgar and me flipping a coin, like, "Hey, you do it, no, I do it, no, you do it, I do it." So
Alright,
we need to
guys.
come up with like a common name for both of us, like Ed Leo, yeah, Leo Ed.
Wow, that sounds like a couple's name also. Ednel.
Yeah, please, Ed Nell.
Ed Leo. Oh my god.
Let go. Let go.
Nice. Yeah, Ledger's also good.
Alrighty then. So guys, let's get down to the topic. So in case in case our listener is a Netflix subscriber, the Social Dilemma movie is currently on the top of the charts. So
Right.
in case you haven't read it or seen it, sorry. Basically, it's a movie about how social media companies are basically tweaking their product in order to make it more addictive. They are basically getting engineers together to focus on three things, which is basically engagement, growth, and advertising. And because of all this tweaking, etc., they have come up with a product that is very addictive and at the same time also causing mental issues amongst the teenagers and people who use it. Mental issues and also body dimorphism, where people are insecure about their bodies, etc.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Leo, what is your opinion on the Social Dilemma?
Yeah, so I remember it takes me back to the podcast where we spoke about if children today have it great, and then we spoke about the plethora of information and all. I seen Social Dilemma, and I'm like, depends at times on what information they get, and this was like really an eye-opening documentary for me, like to show the effects of how a person is influenced by your apps like WhatsApp, TikTok, and different mediums of social media. So yeah, that is my whole take on social media. It's a bit scary. It's a bit scary, but then at the same time, yes, we have to use it to our benefit. And I'm just thinking on those lines now. How do I use this to our benefit? How do we use Facebook
Oh, okay.
and stuff to our benefit?
So,
What about you?
yeah, what about you, Edgar?
So, my feedback after watching it, I'm really in two minds. One thing is, what these guys in this documentary, whatever they're exposing and bringing out to the public is great. It's a big eye opener, and it's actually changed me and the way I started perceiving my phone. Literally, what I did is I went on to the notifications and I blocked every single thing other than SMSs and WhatsApp. So I only get notifications of the SMSs and WhatsApp notifications. So Ethan, you have been tagging me on Facebook in the past few days, and I see your notifications after a few days, and then I like and whatever comment sometimes. That's because I only open Facebook when I feel like opening Facebook. I don't open it immediately. So that has been my immediate reaction. But a few things about this documentary has really startled me. In the documentary also they say, right, instead of we the people, it's we the media, and meaning, the meaning of we the people has changed, and it's not only in the US, it's across the entire world.
Yeah.
And because of the top 10 social media platforms which were actually designed to bring people together, this thing is breaking society universally, and it is making us far more and more further away from each other, which is ridiculous. It's like I'm not getting the exact example, but they say, when you unleash something which you have no idea about, or
like a
something like
kraken.
be careful of what you wish for.
Pandora's box.
Like you unleash the Kraken.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So there are so many movie references, and this is something. I mean, while watching this whole thing, and I was just thinking, what if I was there to just witness Mark Zuckerberg when he was getting face smash, and from those twin brothers he got their idea and
Winklevoss.
combined it together, right? Yeah, the Winklevoss brothers.
Yep.
And then that took me back to The Social Network, the movie which released, I think so, in 2010. If you have not watched it, please go and watch it. This is for our listener. But yeah, man, it's insane to think that guy sitting over there just to take revenge on his girlfriend. He created a face mash app, and now it's changed the world. Like literally, it has changed the world, and that is insane to think of something like that.
Yeah, behind every successful man is a woman. Sometimes you don't know what the reason is, but yeah.
Yeah. So,
True. Good point.
so when I was actually watching The Social Network, sorry, when I was watching The Social Dilemma, my first thought was that this isn't accurate because I'm not influenced by this very often. I don't immediately, go around and basically get influenced by this, feel bad mentally, or get pushed to action. But then I realized that what they are saying over there, it's not about one person getting influenced. It's more along the lines of how many people of the same demographic you can get pushed into it. So rather than our listener probably just thinking, wait, I don't get influenced by social media, so therefore it's not a problem, maybe think about how many other people in total are actually getting influenced by social media, and maybe then you can actually think about the whole consequences of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, another thing is, so basically there were basically, if you look at I did some research on this, and if you look at a timeline of how this whole Facebook algorithm was came across. So
Yeah.
basically the algorithm, just an intro, the algorithm is basically how Facebook decides whether something is should be put on a person's feed. Okay, and it's basically constantly changing. So it's like first it started with how many of the posts got likes. Then it moved on to friends and families. Then it talked about it got different reactions. And then finally the fourth part is that if it generated comments. So they were looking for like videos, etc., which were more than 5 minutes because the 5 minutes had engagement.
Yeah.
And they also found they also wanted people to actually comment, like, etc. So that is exactly when this whole issue came about, because they realized that there were a lot the kind of comments the kind of posts that were getting spread were posts that were inflammatory, like undocumented immigrants, or there's a government conspiracy, etc. So I think rather than a conspiracy, this is just basically the social media is just, or Facebook, etc. They're just trying out different things. They are seeing what their response is, and then changing it. So I don't think it's malicious. I think they're just trying to do the best they can, and from afar it looks malicious.
Right. So that's more of the social algorithm which you're talking about. So for a listener out here, Ethan just broke down what is a social algorithm and how Facebook uses it.
But what I think is that an algorithm is supposed to be very objective in nature. It's not supposed to be biased at all. Okay. But what these companies are doing is they are somehow embedding their philosophies in these algorithms. So, for example, if it's a very bad example, but I'll say it nonetheless. For example, if someone posts a porn video on, actually, you know what? Porn video is not the best example. If someone posts whatever, something which is not very society friendly or family friendly content, okay. The algorithm is supposed to be very objective. It has to promote it the way it's actually designed to be promoted, like in a very objective manner. But that's not what happens, man. If the algorithm detects that this is something not family friendly or not society friendly or whatever, it does not promote that kind of content. So therefore, I don't think social media and these companies, they are very democratic, and they're very open in their approach. They are very, whatever their philosophies are, they ultimately embed it in the algorithm. And that, I think so, is malicious over a period of time.
Right.
All right. So to counter that point, One thing that I've read is basically for algorithms,
Yeah.
how do you actually know whether an algorithm is actually working? So what you do is you create an algorithm, you basically type it, run it across a few users, and then if the users like what they see, you basically know that it's working. So there's an inherent bias in it, in the sense that if the programmer thinks that the user wants to see conservative post, then he'll build the algorithm in such a way that the conservative posts are like that. So I'll give you a good example. I'm a sell side financial analyst. Okay, so we have models that are supposed to basically value a company to sell it, right?
Okay.
But in another sense, that I want to sell this company for 100 million USD, right? So with that number in mind, I'll probably tweak the model a bit so that the valuation comes out to around 100 million. Okay, so in a sense, I am tweaking the algorithm to fulfill my bias, some inherent thing that I want. Okay,
Correct.
I'm not also, and just an FYI, even the buyer of the whatever company I'm selling, he also knows we do this, so it's not unethical. Just an FYI.
Okay.
So
No,
yeah,
that's across everywhere. They want a certain value they want to sell the company at, and that's how you derive the
So-
value.
yeah. So basically, if you're talking about inherent bias, that is there because when you're making an algorithm, what output you want, that is basically how the engineer will put the algorithm to try and push the same output.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
for me, the algorithm is more of trying to so the way I look at an algorithm is a code written in order to understand the user. Now, when
Yeah.
an algorithm runs, it's trying to run out of your people who you're like how you broke it down to us. Like it's trying to gain like who do you see first? So you'll see your family, friends, and people like that. On the basis of that, what views you like to see. Like for example, if you would like to see like a pro Trump or a pro like Angela Merkel post or like pro Nas Daily pro post, the algorithm is trying to learn off you. There are times that algorithms will just throw something very random in your face, and this has been known to happen even for instances on YouTube where a random video has got like multiple likes. And that's the whole thing. And that's the whole thing with algorithms. And that's why you think that, okay, fine, algorithms are trying to run us or whatever. At times it's trying to learn off us. And that's my whole understanding of a social algorithm right now as we speak about it.
Like Edgar.
So one thing is, yes, algorithms are learning of us and they're learning about us. All that is fine, but also what concerns me is that algorithms are also designed in a way to influence people who are on the edge about something. They're not this side or they're not that side. So that's how these algorithms during the elections.
Yeah.
Some people are strongly democratic in nature. Some people are strongly Republican, and this I'm referring is to the to the U.S. elections. Okay,
Yeah.
but through the algorithms, they were able to sway people's opinions from one side to another.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So that's one thing. Another simpler example is you guys heard of the flat Earth theory.
Right.
So
Yeah.
for our listener who hasn't heard or who doesn't know what the flat Earth theory is, so there are a bunch of people in the US and probably across the world, but in the US for sure, and they think that the Earth is not round, the Earth is flat, and they think this is all a conspiracy by scientists and governments and scholars that to trick people into thinking that the Earth is flat. Now, don't ask me why. This is what they believe in, and what I think is on social media, if someone clicks on flat Earth theory of something related to flat Earth once, after they click on that, they kind of, and probably they don't know, they're not very well aware. I know it's ridiculous to say that someone is not very well aware whether the Earth is round or flat, but trust me, there are people and there are idiots like that in this world. Okay, so these algorithms, they make people like these who are on the edge of something or who don't know something or they're not very well aware of the world, they kind of push them from one side to the other, and that's what they evidently they start making them believe that the earth is flat. There's another example which I have is the Area 51 raid which happened. So do you guys have you guys heard about it?
I have an
Yeah,
idea,
okay.
but not like to the extent of what
Okay.
it's about. Yeah.
So Area 51 is this place in the US, for our listener again, who where the US government conducts these kind of experiments, and they think that they can find alien life and pieces of hardware from UFOs and stuff, and they're kind of working on it. Now, how true Area 51 is, what is inside, it's all top secret, it's all classified, we have no idea what it is. But on Facebook, one guy started like this campaign to raid Area 51, and this campaign became such a massive hit
Oh yeah.
that people actually planned one day and date to go and just barge into Area 51. And remember, okay, Area 51 is a place, it's run by the government, it's a secret place. I don't know exactly which part of US it is in, I think. I'm not sure anyway. And these people were going to invade it.
Nevada.
Nevada, yeah? Right, Nevada.
Yeah.
So Area 51 is in a state called Nevada, and these people were actually going to invade it and try to find out the truth about aliens, whether they exist or not.
I honestly think it was just a joke. It was just a community thing, like having a Pokemon catching session.
Yeah, but that
The Pokemon
exactly
Go session.
proves my point that it's something just a joke. But so through social media, people get so influenced through these algorithms and all this nonsense, and then
Yeah,
they
but-
literally believe it's true, and then they want to go and raid these places.
Yeah, but like what I feel in this case or in cases like this, it's like sometimes it's that underlying belief within them that they want to know that it's true.
Right.
And it's more like if I see this more with my parents and their generation, but suddenly they'll come up to us and they'll tell us, do you know it's the end of the world gonna come? And it's predicted and forecasted in our holy books.
2012.
Yeah,
Remember when-
not even
I don't know.
2012.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Remember
but
when
they're
our
like,
parents used to... Sorry. Remember when our parents used to tell us not to believe everything on the internet?
Right, but they
I-
themselves are influenced by WhatsApp. Now today I have my mother coming up to me and telling me, stuff like the revolution is going to happen. Like for our listener again who is not in the Christian belief, revelation is supposed to be the end of the world, the Armageddon in short. And it's a lot of this conspiracy is going on, like it's the Armageddon. And this is across, I do not know if it's across religions, but this is what is happening. And this is what I see resonate with my people, with my uncles as well, and people of this similar age group. And that what I try to feel is that an algorithm sometimes try to learn of a person, and then afterwards it gives them to see what they want to see, and just make their belief a
Right.
little more stronger.
Stronger, correct.
The only fact that is scary
Yeah.
is that the reach of this algorithm.
It's
Now,
insane.
In the past, you had like 5 to 10 people that it had its influence on.
Correct.
Today you have like plethora, you have like thousands, you have like 2,000 people that very same algorithm can reach to, and it's just scary at times. Like that, I think so. I read this article where it says that, and I think so. Even the Social Dilemma covered it, where the impact of false news and fake news
Yeah.
has a 6 times impact as compared to the actual
True.
news,
True.
and that
But
is
then
like
that's-
so scary.
There's an old saying, right? Winston Churchill also said that the rumors and all can cross the globe before the truth has a chance to put its pants on. So rumors and fake news in general, in general, I think they travel much faster than the truth because
Yeah, but now
everyone
you have
likes
a
it.
tool that amplifies that speed, right? Like back then you had like word of mouth. And now you have a tool which will just overnight it's gone.
Correct.
Sometimes it does have a positive impact, sometimes it does have a negative impact. I do not know, I'm just going deviating for like a bit on this topic. Did you all see that Baba Ka Dhaba thing right now? What is going on and trending on Facebook?
No, tell
So
us.
for our listener, right, Baba Ka Dhaba right now is this old man who's running a shop in India, and these
Okay.
vloggers go there They take a video, they know he's struggling. He's an 80-year-old man with his wife. He's not eaten food and he could not afford food for that day. He's not got sales. And then they went and posted this video on Facebook, and today there's like a mad rush during a pandemic. There is a mad rush at Baba Ka Dhaba. You have news guys, you have Pepsi sponsoring him, and it's become a full advertising campaign. And the whole underlying fact is the advertisers want to feast off an algorithm and want to feast off data. And that is what also the social dilemma speaks about. An advertiser, your data is sold to the highest bidder, in short.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So now that we discussed, like, it's as good as sold to the highest bidder, like, I feel that this is more sounding like Westworld and Rehoboam, and you see these few algorithms that actually rule and control a person out there.
Right.
And it's getting scary. Like, Skynet is real, or you can even say that for our listeners who's not seen Westworld, if they've seen Terminator, Skynet, and then if you've not seen the Terminator series, if it's more like how do I put it, like WALL-E, even WALL-E was part of it.
AI.
And like WALL-E spoke about it. AI, like, what is Will Smith's movie on the robot?
AI robots.
iRobot, and even Eagle Eye. So these are a few movies that spoke about a system that is controlling a person's life, in short, like, and it's controlling how we go around with that.
So I'm not sure if you guys actually know about this, but our favorite communist country, China, is actually coming out with a system that basically tracks people. It's something referred to as the social credit system. Okay. So what it does is basically it uses facial tracking and social media presence, etc., to basically see how many times a person does socially beneficial or socially bad behavior, and based on that it will basically give you a score. And that score is something that will decide certain things. Like, for example, if you can get an air ticket, if you can get a ticket on the high-speed train. So as of June 2019, 26.82 million air tickets have been denied to people who are considered as untrustworthy. So
and this is
it's
China?
basic. This is in China.
Is this fake news or real news?
It's on Wikipedia, and Wikipedia is right.
Most of the times, yeah, we paid them recently, like donated stuff to them, so they have to be
$200.
Good.
So at least, can you believe that this system is actually around, Edgar?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
I believe it is around because while you were explaining this whole thing, Black Mirror, an episode of Black Mirror was going on in my head, which is very similar to what you were just now talking about. Now, I have a bad memory, so I cannot really remember exactly what had happened in that episode. But I remember someone asking someone else for stars or points or something because they wanted to survive, or something like that, man. And it sounds very, very similar to what you said. So, while we are on the topic of social media and social media addiction and its effects, if our listener has not watched Black Mirror, they should definitely watch Black Mirror because it talks a lot about it. The episodes are a lot about social media, artificial intelligence, this, that, and it's like what are the bad things that can happen to us in future if we are not aware of.
Right.
Yeah. So one thing I think probably is a recent trend is that people are not. So basically, there's an alternative source of information now. People, rather than getting their news directly from, say, a news channel or a website, they're basically getting their news from, say, Instagram or social media and everything.
Correct.
So that also gives the opportunity for people to basically, manipulate the news by putting it in only their favorable method. So what do you guys think about that?
So
Edgar?
when you were talking about people getting the news from Facebook, the first person that came to my mind was Joy. I remember when I used to travel to office with him, he used to we used to be standing in the metro together, and he used to be constantly on his phone, and he was just browsing stuff. And then I just asked him, like, dude, what are you doing exactly? And he was like, I'm just reading news on Facebook on my phone. So that's how he consumes news, or at least he used to consume news. The other thing is what I watched in a podcast called The Flagrant 2 by Andrew Schultz. I sent you guys the link as well.
Yeah, you did.
Andrew Schultz says that our parents in their zamana, in their generation, whatever they used to see on TV, they used to just believe it directly because that's how they were brought up, because that time we didn't have fake news, we didn't have all social algorithms and social media and all that stuff, right? It was pretty much honest stuff that used to be published on TV. So
Right.
now in our generation, we have grown up with fake news, so we know how to we don't believe everything we see immediately. But however, our parents, although now they have phones and WhatsApp and Facebook and everything, they still they're brought up on that thing where they believe everything whatever they see immediately. Which is why when Ethan, you were telling us earlier about China and how they give points, I asked you, right, is that real news or is that fake news?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I guess, like you said, like you spoke about our parents. I feel this is the most common among our parents. Like even I spoke about my mom talking about the end of the world and stuff like that, and that's
Yeah.
the news that they want, that they believe. Like if an uncle or if someone close in the family posts something, like even as simple as this crazy thing known as your good morning messages will be charged,
Oh, dude.
and that has come to me today. Like good morning messages will be charged. I'm like, Mom, yeah, come on, yeah. We don't have to go through this every day. Yeah. Like not every day, but every time I have to tell you, please verify your sources of your news. Now,
Yeah.
that is what I have to tell. We have to tell them and bring about. And the same thing
Correct.
with the younger generation today. Like some of them who do not know the source and the difference between right from wrong and want to hear what they want to hear,
Yeah.
will believe in the news. They're like, oh yeah, they're right. Like how we come up with the flat earthers, and even people who have even gone to crazy lengths of saying that the coronavirus is not real.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
That is actually going on today. Coronavirus is false. It's come out of a pharmaceutical lab out of China and stuff like that, and that is the news that is going on.
Seriously.
So
I think
I
so.
think
Yeah.
one crazy thing is that people basically there's a distrust with the whole actual news. Like for example, they think that just because TOI or some other news is a little bit biased and all that means they can't be trusted. So they look for alternative news sources, and some of these times these alternative news sources are run by people who do not even have a background in news. They are not journalists. They don't know anything about journalist integrity or proper sourcing of news, and in certain cases they just put in their own thought points or their own angry tones, etc., and they send it, and people readily just take this and use it as actual sources, which is a little bit disappointing. I mean, ideally people should, if they get a post, they should try and check it to see whether it's correct or not.
Which is why we have this website called Fact Checker or factchecking.com, right?
Yeah.
Just for this particular reason.
Right.
I think recently what really irked me is someone literally sent a WhatsApp forward, and in the WhatsApp forward is basically a video with a scroll. Basically, they are writing something and they're like, I don't have any proof, but I feel that the whole coronavirus was actually made in a lab. So there's no such way that this can travel so far, and it's so fast. And I think basically China wants to disrupt all the other economies so that they will recover faster and they'll be able to take over the world. And I'm like, one, it's through WhatsApp, so there's no journalist integrity attached to it, and it's like unlikely. Which country would actually do something like this? Basically, destroy its own economy just in the hope that it can disrupt other economies. I mean, it doesn't make sense. But there are some people who are a little bit, I think they're just looking for a good story.
The whole thing that comes out of people not believing the news or not trying to vet their news, and what Edgar spoke about Andrew Shaw's podcast on how parents would look at one news and then believe it. Our generation or the generations a bit before us grew up with the fact that saying that the news is common across everywhere. Is it bought? Is it biased? Is it stuff like that? And that from that doubt it crept on to like a lot of people coming up with vlogs and stuff like that. Funnily known, like what do you call a person who's a vlogger, or what bracket do they fall under?
Influencer.
They fall on influencer. Exactly.
Yeah.
They're not artists. No one calls them an artist. They're known as influencers.
Yeah.
Because
Very
they
true.
change a person's perspective on things
Yeah.
in across your social media.
Sure. I think now everyone just wants to be an influencer because it gives you all of that press privileges and stuff. Companies will give you free stuff. You'll be able to get a little bit of ad revenue. So everyone is like really in a rush to become an influencer.
Right.
In fact, influencers not rarely, it would be wrong to say rarely, but there are many influencers who call themselves influencers rather than digital content creators. I mean, and when you call yourself a digital content creator, it means it's totally different than calling yourself a social media influencer or just an influencer.
Right. So that's it. And then talking about advertisers and stuff like that, like I read this part is that sometimes even companies that want to promote their stuff, like Facebook technically wants them to spend money, and it's more of a revenue like that. Like they have the content, they have that database of people and the talent pool of people. You're literally sold to the highest bidder, like, and that's how Facebook tries to generate their revenues, which is wrongly done at times. So that's a part of an advertisement also, right?
Mm-hmm.
While preparing for this podcast, I just came across this thought, and I wanted to ask both of you, and obviously to our listener also. Do you think it is right? Okay, so everyone knows this, right? That if we are not paying for the product, we are the product, right? And all these big tech giant companies, they're using our data, and they're actually selling it to advertisers. And the advertisers are the buyers or the consumers, not us. Okay, but what I was thinking is, would you be fine using social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and everything if these companies would pay you for your data? Or don't you think it is right or fair that if they're using you for something, especially information in this case, or data, they should pay you for it, right? What is your opinion on this, Ethan?
So I think that these guys are providing a free service. Definitely, they should get compensation somewhere. And if they want to sell our data or to someone else of sort, yeah, it's okay. But I think there's a matter of something as intrusion. That if the ads are too intrusive, or the platform that they are using seeks to change its essence, then it's bad. Like, I'll give you an example. When YouTube was a normal uploading site, right? In its first inception, anyone could come, just sting an app, and they'll be famous. Justin Bieber became famous. You got a lot of comedians who probably wouldn't have been able to. Russell Peters became famous.
Yeah.
But now I think now a change that at least I've noticed is that YouTube is actually telling the artists what they want. So a lot of artists are complaining that they're not earning enough from YouTube advertising, and two, YouTube is blacklisting them because of something they call low effort content. So now they have to try and find a way to make their content more engaging or something like that. So something as simple as just reading off Reddit is no longer important. So in a sense, YouTube is actually controlling the artist rather than the artist, just freely contributing to YouTube, which is
Spot
kind of
on.
wrong.
Spot on.
So, is this the artist you're talking about, YouTube artists, or your normal artists, like even
No,
even a perform?
anyone. So even if for us tomorrow, if we go on YouTube and we try to get this podcast on YouTube and try to get people, we may
Which we
get
are.
a notice. Yeah, we may get a notice saying your content is low value, low effort content. We need you to do this, this, and this. Ask more questions or something of sort. And then, I mean, that's basically controlling us rather than just creating a platform for people to share. And that is basically like, it's not just, if you look at it, social medias are just saying they are platforms. They are not editors. They are not telling people what they have to do. They are just letting anyone publish on it. But when they become actual editors, then that's a totally different thing.
Right, it's a whole new ball game. Yep.
Yeah.
So Lionel, I am very curious to know what is your take on us being paid for data, and especially when our privacy is intruded. I want to know your take, but just to build up on Ethan's point, what he's talking about is the YouTube artists. Just to give an example, which just came into my head, Rogan, for example, who is the biggest podcaster in the world, and he's a very famous personality. He talks a lot of stuff which is, not family friendly content. He's abusing, he's smoking weed on the podcast, he's drinking alcohol. And he does not get any ad revenue from YouTube. Now, this guy has 12 million followers on YouTube, just YouTube itself, let alone the other podcast platforms. Okay. Imagine how much of ad revenue from YouTube he's missing out on, like probably thousands and thousands or even millions of dollars. Okay. Now what has happened, because he knows that YouTube is promoting family friendly content rather than, just real artistic, whatever the artist wants to promote.
Artistic freedom
Expression.
or whatever, yeah.
Correct. He's leaving YouTube and he's moving to Spotify. And now even in Spotify, the employees are having issues with him coming on to Spotify and talking about things like, they think he's anti-trans and he's anti-this and anti-that. And they have, that's a separate issue. But what I'm saying is that he's left YouTube, or he's leaving YouTube, or he's in the process of leaving YouTube. And now he's moving on to Spotify. And that's what these top level artists are doing, man. They are leaving platforms like YouTube because of these rules and regulations by these companies like YouTube. But anyway, coming back to your opinion on whether we should be paid for our data.
Right. So taking the listener back to one of our podcasts earlier and tying it back to the cookies and my answer back then, I was fine with them taking my data because it was free and I'm using their platform for free. But after watching Social Dilemma, after reading a lot about it, I would say yes, if you're taking my data, you need to compensate me a bit. But you're ideally taking my data just to earn off me also at the same time.
Right.
That is the whole idea.
Right.
And I need what the whole documentary of Social Dilemma also is trying to point out is, okay, you have your data content over there. You need to regulate it. You need to know what data goes to them or not. Because today it's very scary that Google has everything of yours. It has where you've been. If your maps are not off, it knows where you live, where you work, where you've been, which pub you've been to, which places you've been to, with linking with Uber and all those other things. That is your entire life onto one platform. And
Correct.
tomorrow, if that goes in the wrong hands and sold to the high, again, I'm reiterating on selling it to the highest bidder. My life is sold into someone else's hands. And even if you're paying me for that, yes, okay, fine, do pay me. But what am I benefiting by you knowing my life? Like, are you trying to control, or what is your whole agenda of that? Yes, definitely money. I will not say no to money, but you would need to restrict on what privacy, what data mine goes to them. There are times that I mean, imagine suckers who are actually searching for penis enlargement pills in YouTube and Google coming to know about that. Like
Yeah.
that is like certain private and intimate stuff that you need. On a flip side, even if it's like a creepy stuff, it's good that they know about it. But certain things in your life which you want to keep a secret, and more on why I asked on the artist thing with Eaton on YouTube. There's a lot going on right now known as the gap. It's known as a gap, and a lot of these artists, even like Beyonce and your normal
Taylor Swift.
artists that record like Beyonce, Justin Bieber, and all those guys are earning revenues. They are record revenues right now. So technically, right now, back then, your revenue, the artistic revenue would be gauged by the CD sold and the
Right.
content sold. Today, it's more on your YouTube views and the number of likes and how many things. I think so. Katy Perry is number one on the list of the amount of videos seen, the highest number of YouTube videos seen, and they earn out of that. But they're like the revenue earned as compared to back then from this channel or from these mediums of records and YouTube videos and all is far less as compared to what they would earn. And it's called the wage gap. It's called the gap. The whole term is called the
Yeah.
gap. So to the listener talking about that. So this is across different artists that YouTube doesn't pay you, but yet it remains the largest platform to kind of post your stuff on it.
Yeah, man.
Yep.
So basically, Netflix has been very critical of social media in the social dilemma. But in a sense, also Netflix itself has tried to be addictive by its own self. So we all are familiar with that whole bingeability thing that Netflix tried to do, where they tried to be a bingeable service. And
Right.
yeah, so if you look at it, they tried to make a lot of their shows bingeable through a few ways. Like one of the ways was they. So how a movie normally works is that there are 3 acts: the
Okay.
first act, the second act, and the third act.
Right.
So what they do is they basically in a TV series, the first 2 episodes are Act 1, the first 3 to 7 episodes are Act 2, etc. So like that, because they are so interrelated, they are people are encouraged to actually see first 3 episodes together rather than just keep it as a separate thing.
Correct.
Another thing they do is they end episodes on cliffhangers, like something radically changes, so therefore people want to go to the next episode in order just to see how it resolves,
what happens
etc.
next. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And also, previously, when a TV show was introduced, they would start with self-contained episodes. Like in the first episode, this happens. Second episode, this happens. And then later on, they move on to a full myth arc thing where you have a story that spans multiple episodes. But now, in the first season only, you have like a story that spans the full season. So people are in tuned in it in order to try and see the full story. So what do you guys think about the whole bingeability aspect of Netflix? Yeah, Edgar?
Yeah. So, dude, these 3 things, what you said, how they're making, movies and series very bingeable, that's absolutely true. But I remember speaking to Umale about this. He was explaining this concept to me that if Netflix doesn't create more and more content and keeps people engaged on their platform, they will die out soon because most of the content is not original content. No, I mean it's copied from here and there, and they've purchased the rights. So that's why they have to keep people they have to keep people addicted to their platform so that they don't die out. I think that is the core of why it is so addictive and so bingeable. Does this make sense to you?
Yeah.
So what I think is, if you look at the difference between cable TV and Netflix, it's like cable TV has its own infrastructure. You have to get a guy come in, he has to put the cable in, and then every month you have to pay it. But for Netflix, it's like it's very informal. You can basically if you don't feel that the content is good, you can just stop it until the next blockbuster thing comes out, and then you'll watch it for 1 month, and then you'll stop it, right? So because of that, because they want people to keep on to put with to go with the service for like a
Yeah.
full year,
Right.
probably they have to make sure they have multiple contents on that.
Exactly.
They have a lot of content so that people can get stringed along for the full year. And I think also another thing that they do is that they basically get people to share accounts so that it's like instead of one person's like I'm not going to use it for 1 month, it'll be fine. It's like if you're sharing it, you're like I have to stick in this group because either the group will get angry at me for just leaving and coming back, or I may lose my spot.
Yeah.
Someone else may come in and then I'm gone. I'll have to find someone new. Lionel, any thoughts?
So, yeah, apologies, I was a bit quiet. So I was just reading this article where they are facing backlash on the bingeability and coming up with the term of bingeability because it was found in a study and survey that people are losing their sleep over this whole thing, and it's
Yeah.
affecting mental health, and it's affecting people like drastically. Another thing, what I noticed also, what Netflix is doing is the whole crux of our entire podcast. We're talking about a social dilemma. We're talking about a content that is sort of changing our viewpoint. The same thing happened when they had released Game Changers. And these are a few contents that they are releasing. Now, to elaborate more on Game Changers, Netflix last year, somewhere around last year, had released the show known as, or this documentary known as The Game Changers. And it spoke about how the food we eat or the content or the food intake of ours is kind of poised, and it promoted more towards veganism. Like it showed pros on veganism more than anything, and people were like out there were like, come on, yeah, you don't need to enforce your ideas and thought processes on us. And there are these few documentaries which also Netflix has introduced. So even more on the control aspect of it, they are trying to influence us in some ways through bingeability. And
Very true.
this is the whole thing what I feel on Netflix, bingeability and stuff like that. So for those who've not watched the Game Changers, it's a very good understanding on how to lead a healthy life, but it's more of what do you take from it. You don't need to take everything from it. Like it's like totally telling you to stop your meat, and it's going to even say that this it's very weird that this is what my friend was telling me at a lunch table in office was like, if you want a long lasting erection, vegans are more prone to have like greater erections for and longer growth, and your Baburao will stand stronger, grow bigger and stuff like that. And it's kind of weird, like and they've done stuff like that, and it was trying to promote veganism to a whole new level. And yeah, that's what you have, these few documentaries out there on Netflix.
Yeah. And I think also, if you're talking about algorithms, also Netflix has that has an algorithm to basically help you to decide what to watch next. So it I think each TV show has a huge amount of data points within it. Like, is it dark? Is it a teen comedy, etc.? And basically, based on how long people actually interact with it, it decides what to do next. And I think there are also a lot of TV shows which basically are algorithm buzzwords, that we need a show about which is a teen comedy and which is also dark. So you get the chilling adventures of Sabrina. So in a sense, they also use algorithms a lot also.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel the algorithms are a bit flawed because every second thing that they release is supposed to be number one trending. That is always there, and then everybody ends up watching it. That is kind of this.
But if you're saying Netflix's algorithms are flawed, have you gone on Amazon Prime? Dude, that is like ridiculous. The algorithms, there are no algorithms only. It's so crazy. It's so ridiculous.
Because Prime doesn't have enough. Prime doesn't have enough content. It's much less. But yeah, and I think also in terms of anxiety inducing, if you look, a lot of their TV shows, they have like 20-year-old, 25-year-olds who look like with bodybuilders with abs and stuff. So when we are watching stuff like this, we are like, shouldn't I have a body like that? Is something wrong with me? So that also creates anxiety within us. Have you guys ever seen
Yeah, that's the whole media in short. Like, it's kind of very weird. Like, every, working husband will be like, buffed up and, he'll be, a guy working in a normal Wall Street and stuff like that, they're so thin. And I'm like, oh, no, not necessarily, because majority of them are, but, some of them, like, who are analysts stuck on desk, we know the pain, man. You don't even get up to have a normal lunch. Your eating style and everything is gone and it's kind of flawed. But this is what they try to show, like, the fun side. Like, you're supposed to look like at that particular way, and it's affecting people. It's that social acceptance is what I was seeing Dr. Phil today, but kind of weird. But yeah, that is what he was talking about, social acceptance, and that's what's ruling it. And that's what I think even Social Dilemma also speaks about on, yeah.
Edgar, any thoughts?
Yeah, man. So I totally agree with both of you when you guys say, your body image and the perception of your own body gets affected when you see these things in serials. But also at the same time, just to kind of move a little bit from in a different point of view, there are so many apps nowadays, on Instagram and Snapchat, which makes young girls who are like probably 13-year-old look like 26-year-old. Rogan's daughter, Rogan posted this on Facebook and on Instagram. He posted a photo of himself. Okay. Now Rogan is like an alpha male. He looks very manly and whatever. But this,
Definitely.
He clicked a picture of himself as a female. And it looks very convincing. You would not say that, hey, this is a guy, and the photo, the software has changed his image. So there's a lot of body dysmorphia happening in. I mean, Lionel, earlier you were saying that for people like us, we are adults and we have these issues when we are working and stuff. Dude, imagine teenagers and pre-teenagers. They have 10 times worse issue, when it comes to the same thing. I mean, at least our prefrontal cortex has developed compared to them. But these guys, and which is why there's so much of self-harm, there's so much of suicide rates in this category of people.
Right.
For the same reason.
Right. So coming back to that, on us, like, honestly speaking, even back in the day when we were there in college, anorexia was the biggest issue and the biggest topic out there.
Right.
It's just that now it is, now it was very sad. Like, back then, anorexia was a topic, and now it's just amplified, and it's become more of an image and stuff like that. And back to a few podcasts earlier, we were talking about Black Lives Matter and all, and people want to go there to show that they are part of the movement and sort of part of these kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's become more like, oh, I support you, without even applying your brain towards it.
Yeah.
It's literally like that at times.
Yeah, it's basically like forwarding a WhatsApp without reading it.
Yeah.
It's just, you just do it like someone on our podcast just did last week or yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to ask you, Ethan, is this a dig at me? And you already answered my question.
What did he forward? I forgot.
So he forwarded me something about how if in the workplace they focus more on individual achievement, that a person has to be the best, etc. And rather than, if you focus on, say, collectively coming together as a team rather than on individual, you will probably have less of a wage gap, less of gender disparity, etc. So I replied to that, and apparently this guy didn't even read it, so he didn't even know what he was sharing. So yeah, I think one probable takeaway from that our listeners should take away from this podcast is, whatever you read on whichever platform, just do a little bit of digging. If it's something that you're really interested in and you want to share, just do a little bit of digging first.
Okay, just in my defense, what I read. So, on YouTube, they have this one image, right? Nowadays, between whatever videos that they show you, they have one image. So I saw something that said, that was on the lines of, theory of what is it? Theory of evolution or survival of the fittest?
Survival of the fittest.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
saw something on the lines of survival of the fittest not being true anymore. And I remember in college, was very, he used to always talk about survival of the fittest. And there was also an article attached in the description. So what I did was I just took a screenshot of the survival of the fittest doesn't necessarily exist anymore. That line, I took a screenshot, I sent it to Ethan, and I didn't click on the article and read it myself. But what I did is I just copied the article link also and sent it to him. So basically, he read much more than, and he knew much more than I knew, but I just sent it for f***'s sake.
But if you
But like talking about survival of the fittest in college days, didn't you beat him at a race? Or someone beat him at a race?
No, that was Sherwin. So we have a friend named Sherwin who used to play football, and I under the mistaken impression that because I was taller, I would be able to run
Cover more
further
ground.
than him. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
So,
the games we used to play back then, man.
No, and interestingly enough, Sherwin, the name Sherwin translates into swift runner. So I should have known from the start not to challenge him.
No, you can challenge him now, but then it's kind of stupid at the games that the games. Yeah, it's kind of weird,
Yeah, but yeah, you know what? Speaking of games, I think apart from social media, you also have a lot of games that try to be very addictive. So more specifically, you have things like Candy Crush and Farmville, etc. They basically, their very essence is meant to try and get people to spend as much time as that. So in terms of Farmville, what they used to do is they basically you cannot just stop playing the game. Every day
Right.
you have to come and do something with your crops. You have to harvest the crop, plant seeds,
I
etc.
remember playing this, man.
And there used to be also a lot of countdowns, like it takes 2 hours for the things to fully grow. So after 2 hours, you have to come back.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because of that, you're always playing the game. You can't, like in my case, if I want to stop playing a game, I can go 1 week without playing a game. But for stuff like Farmville, you have to come back to it every day just to like continue.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So any of us have done stupid things like buying stuff and doing stuff for games? Like I remember doing that, man.
Lionel, I have two stories to share with you. One is on your buying thing, and one is on Eaton's Farmville thing. I remember when I was playing that dumb game, one of my friend added me to a group. You had to be part of a group, and you had to do a
Right.
group effort, group activity together. So I ended up adding random people. I ended up adding her friends who I had no clue about, and we are working on Farmville to make some, to get to the next level. It was, now that I think back, it is very crazy. The other story, what I have to share with you is, just for the listener, I'm not a gaming person. I'm not into gaming and stuff. But because of the lockdown, I had downloaded an NFS game on my mobile, and I started playing it. And I love racing games, car racing games, and I got really addicted to it. I got so addicted to it that to go to the next level, like to purchase boost or go to the what's the thing called, mod factory or some, where you purchase spare parts
Yeah.
and upgrade your car. Dude, I started spending money online. I started spending, first it was with a small amount, like 100 rupees or 200 rupees. And slowly I started making purchases of like 400, 500 rupees, and my entire amount what I spent on that game was 2000 rupees. And after a
Holy
point,
shit.
I just realized, oh shit, I spent 2 grand on this game. Am I so much addicted and so deep into it? And then I thought that, I was just going crazy, man. Crazy to the extent that I even joined a Facebook group where I read, which showed how to get to the next level, what car to choose, how do you drive this car, how do you solve this level. And I got so, into the game, and it was really destroying me and robbing me of my money. It was a little late by the time I realized I lost 2 grand, but yeah, I uninstalled the game and stopped playing it.
Yeah, man. So, like, I'm more of an old school guy. So, if you look at it, like, if you're talking about games on Facebook, I used to play Farmville, but my friend had my ID and they used to grow crops and gift themselves stuff and all. But the craziest game of the I do not know if you all were around when this game was there. Have you ever played War Book?
No.
So
No, we haven't.
back in 2007, Facebook had this game called Warbook,
Okay.
and it's something like God of War. It's one of these games where you build a city and then you have one necromancer, you will have one. Yeah, so you build a civilization, and you have, I think so, Age of Empires also was something on that ground.
Yeah, real-time
Yeah.
strategy basically.
Right. So it was on Facebook. So I had an ID, and there were like 5 levels. One would be a magician, one would be a landlord, and one would be like a soldier. And you build your ranks and you build your what do you say? You expand on your strengths and stuff like that.
Okay.
Now the thing is that you had to go and attack someone else on Facebook, like a random guy, and you had like these Facebook groups and all. Till date, if you go on Facebook and type my name, there'll be 10 IDs because I made 10 IDs for Facebook for Warbook. And then later on, all my friends started adding me on those IDs, and I'm like, shit, man, let's not do this thing. That was
Yeah.
one thing. And then on payment of games, like I'm a huge Formula One fan. So so when I used to play Formula One on my mobile phone, each car you had to pay for you had a different amount, and I actually bought those cars just because I wanted to go faster at these packages and all. Because when you're dueling with a person online, you need to have like a faster engine setup and stuff like that, and I needed like a powertrain, and I wanted something else, or if I wanted a better brake duct, I would spend money for that. And I ended up spending a lot of money, but I still have the game. I
Do you remember the amount?
and oh, dude, I spent like
Approximately.
as good as I spent $1,000 for a Ferrari, and then to upgrade a package, I spent like another $600 to $700
Oh shit.
just to upgrade that package. And to think of that is like, imagine when we were kids. Like, remember when we were kids, we used to have those gaming parlors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where they used to rob us of
PS.
our money. And this is literally done. This is that they're doing the same thing, but it's like more on the digital aspect of it.
So basically, if you're talking about game monetization, there are like a few things that they can do. So I think for Farmville, there was one story where one monetization team, they were looking for ways to monetize Farmville, and one of the ways they came out with was they took a horse and they just changed the color to purple, and they started selling it, and people actually was paid $150 for a purple horse because it was unique. So
Wow.
basically, people want unique stuff, and that is why they'll basically pay for it. On a similar vein, what's that thing called Candy Crush does is it structures the level such that on your they give you a limited amount of moves. So in 50 moves, you are supposed to finish the level. So what happens is you finish 50 moves and you're just one swipe away from winning the level. And it's like, do you want more swipes? We'll charge you like $50. I don't know the actual amount.
Right.
And you're like, I just want to finish this level, so you'll actually pay for it. And there's another trick they also use. They disassociate yourself with the the money. So rather than paying $5 for 10 moves, you first convert the dollars into crystals, and then the crystals you will use to pay for that.
Yeah.
So like that, your association with how much you actually spending is totally gone.
Correct.
Which is kind of brilliant. And I think also it's ironic that I'm the only major gamer in this podcast. If you ask me, I had a whole line of all the PS3s up to I had all the PSs, PlayStations up to the PS3. I have a gaming laptop which I paid some premium for, and I never actually spent so much on all these mobile games, and only rarely I think I spent a lot on a game.
Yeah, but how much does your game cost technically?
So what happened is, I used to, when I had the PS3, for the PS1 and PS2, it used to be like a free thing. Like I used to go for all these pirated games at like $200, you get the game. For the PS3, I used to spend I think around $1,000 I used to spend for a game.
How can you not spend more than us then?
Okay, fine. No, but I used to buy very outdated games. Like a game is 5 years out of stock. I used to give that for recycling. There's a guy, they'll buy your old games and let you for credit to get new games. So I used to use that. I used to buy very old games, recycle games like that. But I never used to buy straight off the thing for like 3K games. That is just wow. I'm not going to spend 3K for a game. I'll just wait 5 years.
Okay.
And I think also I used to play this game called Destiny, which is it was like an FPS, which is a first person shooter, and you used to get like loot. So when you kill an enemy, they used to drop something, and if you used to pick it up, it could be either a normal common gun or it can be an ultra type rare gun with some special features. So I used to really like playing that, and it was free to play. You don't have to pay anything to play. But what I realized is the odds of actually getting a good gun was very, very less, and you had to just keep on spending a lot of time on the off chance of getting that dream gun. And it's also like if you wanted to get all the latest guns and the top tier guns, you have to buy their add-on packs and stuff. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I was actually considering it once, but then I'm like, I don't want to invest so much time, play this every day just to, to keep my character at the same level. So in the end, I just decided to stop.
They entice you with a want, saying that you either wait or you pay and you get it faster. I think so. That's what's been done.
Yeah, I think it's more of just along the terms of a mindless shooter. And this whole gamification aspect, it's not limited to actually games. If you look at it, Tinder has also gamified themselves.
Right. I was just coming to that. Yeah.
Alright, so Leo, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think so it's more on Tinder and Bumble, and like they give you a certain amount of swipes, and post that you cannot swipe. You either have to buy a package. Like there are times even on like dating apps where they say, okay, someone likes you, but in order for you to know that if they like you and stuff like that, buy a package. And the whole thing is rotating around, like, you spend money and then you kind of get that premium deluxe. Yeah.
And also there's another thing is that they changed the interface in such a way that they just reduced all barriers. So maybe if you look at a traditional marriage thing, you have to go in, you have to look through a long bio, you have to read, and then maybe you press a button. But for this, it's basically like a picture comes up, you see a short description, left or right. So you click left or right. So it's like they stripped all the barriers, they reduced it to just a game, left or right, decide quickly. And that is basically the whole, it's basically gamification of a previous app.
Yeah, it's gamification of what Siva auntie or the Sita auntie would have done. Like left or right, I have given you two options, left or right. You either take this or that.
So yeah, maybe there can be an add-on, or maybe they can put a button called adjustment, where if you want to adjust to the person's preference, there'll be a flexibility button, an adjustment button.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I guess that's our show. So throughout if you look at the full show, the full podcast, we basically told the listener how social media makes itself addictive, how games make themselves addictive, how Netflix makes themselves addictive. But I think now what we need the listener to do is to tell us how to make a podcast addictive. So if you guys have any good thoughts or anything you want us to change, if you don't want someone to talk that often, like, I don't know, Edgar, you want him to be silent, let the audience decide. So yeah, that probably we are open to feedback. You know us, you have told us before, we have put we have taken whatever feedback and we have put it. If you have any other feedback, just let us know. And I think I'm going to leave you with probably the one thing I want to just leave everyone with is probably a very Bakshodi topic, in the sense, the whole concept of destiny, dharma, fate. What if that is just basically God's algorithm for us. God has an algorithm. Destiny is how we can
Wow.
describe it.
Wow.
Yeah. So in
yeah.
that case, you should talk to one of our professors, Kamesh. He will tell you that even Kundli's algorithms, and it's kind of
So yeah, if you want us to discuss this topic or if you want to get in touch with us and discuss with it, just let us know. But for now,
Cool.
thank you guys for watching. We'll see you on the next one.